Hello, hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to elenasbarre, low impact full body workouts. We are finally here with our welcomed guest, RP Thor. It's a pleasure to have you here, RP Thor. I just recently got your book, and one phrase fascinated me. Here, guys, it's applicable to you, those of you who are watching. Never worship the ground a woman walks on. Never be that guy, or you will be picking the peanuts out of your poop to see where that poop came from.
Yes, that's a very good one. My wife gives me a bunch of crap about it. I says, but it's true. If you worship the ground she works on or walks on, you're going to be picking the peanuts out of her poo just to see where that poo came from.
So well said. Oh
Not a
my
good
gosh.
place.
Yeah, I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
that we finally made it. So today we are going to talk about the detrimental outcomes that feminism leads us to. And it's a pretty scary topic. It's also fascinating to see how many people are oblivious to this topic. And yeah, I would love to get some of your insights. So, what do you think about it? And
What do I,
then here we have Plutarch as well. So, add your comments, guys. If you have questions, remember to reach out and send your questions and your comments in here. We'll try to keep track of them.
yeah, we're already facing scary outcomes of feminism. Feminism was birthed right around the time of Marxism and has very, very much fundamental principles that they share completely. Uh, I, and we're reaping some of those outcomes today. Particularly feminism as we see it today is it's pretty scary. It's somewhat of a supremacy movement for sure, and the propaganda that's been used since the advent of really hormonal birth control really propelled this to the next level. And the concepts sound great, sounds fantastic. You know, you're no longer subject to have to control, you know, the sex that you have. You can enjoy it for the pleasure that it is that God gave us and not have to worry about a pregnancy that might occur from it. And so that sounded really good. And then it was, you know, you can go to work, make money, you could do everything a man can do, and you'll have the pleasure of working 40 to 80 hours a week and, you know, not raising your own children just like men do. And here we are today with a falling demographic. Our birth rate is below replacement here in America today, not just here, but across the entire Western world. Do you know where it is not fallen?
Where?
In Africa and in Muslim countries, they still are replacing and increasing their population. Interesting.
That is correct. But do you know where it's falling faster than the Western world?
Where's that?
China.
Oh, yeah. China really toyed with this. You know, they have a very strong communist party, and for it, that's a really strange thing. They play both sides of this. You know, it's egalitarian public face. You know, I did an episode where I showed the female soldiers in China and how the public face says it's all equal. They're this, they're that. And then you realize it's, you know, it's kind of less than 2% of the entire military. And the actual bulk of the female soldiers in the military are intelligence officers designed to use their sex to gather intelligence. So it's interesting. They have that propaganda, but then they also, you know, got rid of their intellectual class when the communists took over. And they did that. There was kind of a lot of misinformation, and they had famine, and the state seized all of the means of production, and they felt like they were going to have overpopulation because, in a strange twist of events, communism has now embraced Malthusian theory, which it never did before, but in just the last maybe 70 years it has. Malthusian theory simply states that human beings unchecked will breed themselves out of existence by consuming every single resource, but it doesn't take into account human ingenuity and the fact that we are actually beings that can make decision when it comes to births. And so they made the decision to do the one-child policy. And they did that, I believe, right around, I don't know the year, but was it in the 70s? It wasn't in the 60s.
No, it was actually like 81.
80, right.
80 or 81.
It was recent. So we've only had 2, maybe 3 generations, and it just quickly, so quickly, it resulted in what, 45 million more men than women in China proper.
And a halving, and a halving of the total number of people in that demographic. It's an old person's home, really, at this point.
Yep, that's nightmarish in nature. It's absolutely nightmarish, and you would think that the competition for men would be super strong, and it is. And if you look at what's happened, it's not for Chinese men. It's for Western men by 45%. Mm-hmm. So this world sexual marketplace has expanded to China. And where are they going for Chinese men? No. Almost half are leaving for Western men or want to leave for Western men across all age groups.
Well, those who have the looks, those women who can pull it off, there are still women who are staying in China, but in comparison to the women who are leaving, there are a lot of those. And
it's a culture in flux for sure. We'll see what happens there. But I do have people on the inside that live in China that I'm very friendly with. And the party and their, I don't know, they prescribe to a 5th generation warfare concept where they would use, they would fund our academia, just like the Soviets did in the early 60s. They would fund it through foundations or non-governmental agencies that they had control of or some controlling interest. And they would fund projects for professors, people that had professorships and things of that nature in our university system, to the point that by I believe it was the early 2000s, nearly 20% of all of the funded projects in the California State University system was funded through either the 1,000 Talents program or the Confucius Institute, both CCP controlled programs. And we don't know how far back that has happened because they constantly change these foundations. And the way they hand out these grants is based on ideological beliefs. The more socialist you are, the more you're going to get these. And the outcomes of that is that these people end up going into business, into law, into government, into academia, and they start to gain power, pass laws, and it starts to become very favorable to a country such as Soviet Russia or communist China. And you can see that with how California works with those, works with China on the import-export very, very closely. They have very close ties to California. There's a large community of Chinese here in California, but it starts there for sure.
And there's a large community up here where we are in the Pacific Northwest, and even bigger up in Vancouver, Canada. There's an interesting note there, though. The Soviet Union tried it, and the Soviet Union no longer exists.
Correct.
And because at the end of the day, it's still a strategy of weakness. It's a strategy that you would never employ it if you were actually strong, right?
I agree with that. I think that's why China will fail. And here's what I was getting at with the people that I know. Where modern feminism is strong is it's really good. It's really good at creating these networks of women in the academic area that really want this egalitarian dream, because it sounds good on paper and it actually feels good. And there's nothing that sounds bad about it, except in real life, the practical application is hollow. And even in China, they're seeing a large movement towards modern feminism. It's pretty wild. And I know the communists hate it, but it comes with a certain woke ideology, which the government of Chinese hate that. They would like to propagate it on other people, as you can see with TikTok. They allow us to watch TikTok that's really woke, and they ban it in their own country, and they control that application. So they have an idea, and I think they're in the fight of their lives trying to create some sort of dominance and long-lasting effect in the world economy. But boy, it's definitely teetering. I think it's much worse in China than they let on. Having known people on the inside, it's much worse.
Well, they still kind of control. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because when you get the data, even from the CCP, like they just released their latest census data, and they've been releasing these updates to the census data, and it turns out that that China has been overcounting their under 40 cohort by like 110 million.
Mm.
So those numbers that we knew were bad were probably even worse. And the reason for the overcounting is the typical corruption. State resources were handed out by the number of children in schools. So it paid to inflate the number of children in schools.
Yeah.
And so as part of the anti-corruption stuff, they have gone back and redone the numbers, but it's looking like India surpassed them as the most populous nation
They did.
in the early 2000s now.
Yeah.
Instead of, just a couple of years ago. And they are headed at this point with the new stuff coming out, I think they're unavoidably headed for demographic collapse. I don't see any way around it now.
Yeah, and that might be a leading indicator for us Western nations too. I think they've concealed it for a very long time because they were out in front of all of this, really controlling their population, where we've been, maybe haphazardly doing it, but feminism definitely has been in the forefront of controlling population. Wait until you're 35, girl. You can have it all. Go to school. All of those things. The sad truth of it is you can still go to school after 35. The problem is if you're pregnant at 35, it is a geriatric pregnancy. If you wait till 40, you have what, a 17% chance of becoming pregnant and carrying it through to a healthy term. That's just enough so that everybody knows somebody 40 and older that has a baby. Therefore, due to the apex fallacy, they think they can do it too. And that's 1 in 5 if you take 10. So if that's the case, your population is absolutely collapsing and you don't even realize it. So yeah, unfortunately, our biology kind of puts us in a place where girls, late teens and 20s, you should probably have some children if you want. That's where Mother Nature has made you the most durable for that purpose.
Well, I've seen data from demographers that says that we could lose 500 million people over the next 10 years just to demographic losses, so people just dying from old age, and another 500 million from famine as a result of the systems breaking down when we lose all that labor.
Oh my gosh, the infrastructure. I've made my living in the infrastructure, and that is the most scary part. I don't know how familiar you are with me, but my background is as a power lineman. I would fly on helicopters, put steel suits on, climb on 500,000 volt towers and repair it so that the electric infrastructure is intact so that everybody can enjoy their internet, their lights, and it can be seamless. They can have refrigerators, refrigerated food, all that stuff is available at your fingertips, and you never know the difference. Maybe sometimes you have a storm and you have to call upon a lineman. There's only 154,000 of us in North America, and that includes Canada. Well, 45% of us are within retirement age in the next 5 years. We haven't replaced at the right rate. So, and that means retirement age is 67 years old. I'm 61.
Oh, this hurts.
That could be a huge surprise to a lot of people because it's a very technical and skilled trade. And everything that revolves around it, the protection systems, the infrastructure builds, the material supply chains, all of that.
Well, I've been chatting with some of my electrical engineer friends recently, and I'm slowly coming to the realization that, so if you look back through history, all the way back to the War of the Roses, we can trace these 80 to 90 year cycles that end with a major crisis, the last one being World War II.
Right.
Okay. That's the fourth turning. It's I can send you guys books. The latest book is like 1/3 footnotes and research. So if you guys are into data, I can give you the data. But I'm looking around for a peer power to the United States in terms of military might, and I can't find it. The Chinese are not it.
No, not even close.
Right. As a quick example, 800,000 tons of naval shipping in China, 3 million in the U.S. Navy. Okay. Yeah. Just by weight of metal, we've got 2.5 times on them. Okay. But what I absolutely could see happening is a failure of the electrical grid, particularly as we push on this electric vehicles, electrify everything. And look at California, look at Texas and the troubles they're having. And we figured we need conservatively 250,000 linemen. to redo, because it's not just the power generation, but we're talking about, and you speak this language, we need to double the amperage to every home to really support charging cars.
Sure.
Right? Sure. They're like,
Absolutely.
okay, well, that means rewiring everything from the generation point to the individual houses. Right?
Yeah. These are things that a lot of the woke establishment doesn't really think through when they create these policies. That is an entire rebuild of the infrastructure in the counts of billions and closing in on $1 trillion across the nation. For what purpose? You could do it over time. And in some cases, it's so ridiculous, like here in California, that they're counting on the fact that we might invent something like superconductors that'll solve the problem. I mean, come on.
Geez.
We're going to force it by legislation. I think that electric vehicles can be very effective. And of course, solid state batteries, all that stuff is amazing. What we've done with solar is pretty impressive. It helps the grid. It helps us decentralize the grid, but that's still infrastructure that has to be maintained. So with a falling population, we are at big risk. You know where we have a pretty solid risk we've been addressing for years? You'd find this interesting, Plutarch, is we realized somewhere around 2006 to 2009 that we could have something called a coronal mass ejection that could overpower the grid, and we could be without electricity for weeks or months. So they slowly have been trying to ground and harden systems, at least in California. And it's very difficult to pass the kind of legislation we needed to harden that infrastructure because it just wasn't front and center. Who wants to pay for this stuff when it's only happens once every 150 years? But the impact of something like that could cost countless lives, as dependent as we become on power. Power is really an interesting animal. People don't think about it, but if you can control electricity, you will control people's lives to the nth degree. And so government has, in the last 15 years, really, really got involved in power. You can see these smart meters that are now in every single home. I would not be surprised if you don't have one where you're at. And these are little meters that sit on the wall, and they have microwave generators, and they create data that flows on every wire. And there is 2 entities that operate these things nationwide. There is the owner and there's the operator. Your electric utility is the operator, and the owner has always been the Department of Energy. Most people don't know things like that, but power is a really powerful thing. There are people that are looking at it, some for the best, some for the worst. Yeah.
I actually have a question. Are there enough people, enough men to do the work that needs to be done?
Right now, yes. And I think we can train men to do the work as the population goes down. But it would take an event like a Carrington event that would weaken the grid, that would cause a problem. We're going to have some expenses, and we're going to have some problems with the grid as the population ages and puts pressure on the economy. Just imagine this. If 45% of the linemen do retire, there is a problem. That means extended outages. We're already doing rolling blackouts in California, things like that. So it's our ability to respond is slower. This knowledge can be passed on. In an emergency, you could probably enlist a lot of these guys to help, but it's not a good long-term solution. It could potentially be very rough. We could also get around it by paying these guys more and attracting more men into the field and kind of, taking the safety risk to train them very, very quickly. That could be a possibility if it was needed. They've done things like that in the past. They'll do a shake and bake lineman, cross our fingers and hope you don't kill yourself. Just 100 years ago, the death rate for a lineman was 1 in 2. That meant I would go to work. Before my career was over, 1 in 2 of us was going to die on the job. That's how unsafe it was. So thank God we still have injury rates that are higher than police and firemen, but we are getting it much, much better. Electricity is unforgiving. But I think it's not as bad as I might paint it out to be. It is a risk that we're going to have to manage, not just here, but with a falling demographic. What do we do with old people that aren't capable of working, that need this power? And now it's expensive. They're going to
where does the money come from? We need to start
not just
from.
You better start working hard because I need your tax.
Yeah, right.
Well, where does the money come from? But also, where did the people come from to do it? Because last I checked, dead people don't work.
Nope.
And at we have not perfected any sort of technology to make ourselves live forever. And frankly, I don't think we should personally. But, you know, we're not there yet. And so we need to train people on how to do this. And it's going to be like, I think the only real answer we have is to offer large sums of money. But we can have a whole conversation about what's happening in the economy. In a falling demographic, you have falling credit creation. That's a deflation.
Yep.
Like, we can talk about the Federal Reserve and the money printing they do, and I have a whole spiel on that I don't need to get into right now. But like, the money isn't going to be coming from an increasing demographic. If you look at the Great Inflation in the 1970s, that coincided with the largest generation in human history graduating and going to work and forming families, and they needed to buy things, houses, cars, baby supplies, right? And they didn't have the income to do it, so they did it on credit. Well, we have the opposite problem now, and that's how you get the doldrums of the post 2008 era. I
think inside of that is the fix, and I'll tell you why. Well, let's get back to the scary outcomes of feminism. Let's just say feminism is a very large branch of this social Marxism that's invaded our entire school system, our thought process here in the West. And we're bound and determined to take this social Marxism to the next level in a country where we were really opposed to that sort of thing and really based on rugged individualism. The issue with that is going to be that when infrastructure does start to fail and we become overburdened with regulation, things won't get done, things won't get paid, and that's going to frustrate a lot of people. And I think that's probably more realistic. We're going to see gray market capitalism, even black market capitalism, that will start to overtake these ideals over the course of time. It may take a generation or two because propaganda lives in generations, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Elena, you're probably very familiar with it, but just like some of the useful idiots that the Soviets used, they would convince them so much with this propaganda, they would march to the trench where they were going to take the bullet, believing all along in the state. And only until the gun was against their head and they saw the bodies in the trench that they realized this wasn't real. This was all fake. Far too late. It's that need inside of all of us to be right that is so strong that propaganda can be used against you, especially if you were trained at a very early age. So it will take a generation or two that operates outside of standard channels in the gray market, shall we say, and people moving with their feet, moving from country to country. America might slip as far as the great economic power. There's going to be some struggles for sure. There's going to be some wars, some struggles, but I think there is plenty of opportunity to turn it around, but it's not going to look like what we think it should look like based on our past. We're never returning to a 50s model. Correct. You know, that was kind of a fantasy anyways. The longer we get away from the 50s, men and women living together in perfect harmony, you know, that's not really the case. You know, men and women are better together than they are apart, but it's going to take some hard times to realize that there's a lot of factors going on right now. And it seems to me, generally not too much on the conspiracy, but on the conspiracy side of things, they don't want young men and women having sex and having children. It's just, there's too much out there. I really think it's an anti-population agenda that's being expressed and demonstrated in the relationship markets today. They know that women are hypergamous and they want to get at least the same or better than them. They want to marry up and have sexy sons. They want to have children with the best quality men they can. And with the advent of social media and regular old school media, letting them know that you can do no wrong. You are the princess. You deserve your prince. You were born with this right. And by the way, your right is your primary sexual agency, which is what you were gifted with as a woman. You're going to be really put out if you have to work to have a good relationship. You're going to feel really bad. And you might delay it until you're in your late 30s. And then it's too late, because if you would have had 4 children, now you might just have 1 if you're lucky. And that is a decline in population over the course of generations. And that's the really scary outcome that I can see for feminism.
Well, what frustrates me most, that billions of money was done. There were a lot of companies that benefited from selling women that their sexuality is evergreen, and they made a lot of money out of this. and women believed it. So it's like, yeah, women are liable. Women should be held accountable for their own stupid choices because they blindly believe what they were told.
Yep.
But at the same time, I see it from the social media standpoint, from the marketing standpoint, that it's just a brainwashing project. People, men and women equally, were brainwashed.
Yep.
To behave in a certain way.
For sure.
Well,
and I feel
well,
bad
and-
for the women that buy into it because they will be held accountable in the end. Are you familiar with Kevin Samuels?
Oh, yes.
Sure, yes.
I'm sorry, baby. Buy a dog and die alone.
Die
It's
alone,
too late
yeah.
for you. You're not only in the bargain basement bin, you are at the Goodwill at this point. You're lucky if somebody's going to buy you before you get there, you know.
Well,
It's just a harsh reality.
It's interesting you brought up the Malthusian stuff, because when I was at Microsoft, Bill Gates, he had a reading list for all Microsoft employees, and
Robert Malthus.
Malthus was on the list.
Mhm.
And guess what Microsoft employs? Armies of women.
Absolutely.
So they're reading this thinking, oh, well, I shouldn't have kids. Look at how horrible it is for the environment and the culture and blah, you know.
I believe
all the different reasons.
Microsoft at a certain level also offers egg freezing.
Oh,
I haven't heard if they've gotten onto that. I know for a fact Amazon does.
Quite a few. I mean,
yeah.
I'm in a large electric utility, and at a certain level, they offer it. So,
Okay, yeah. And I don't know if for sure.
I'm not
because
100% sure,
Microsoft-
but I know that a lot
Yeah.
of corporations do.
Right. And I
Part
don't
of the
know why
medical
women would want to do this. I don't get it at all. You know, but the
Skull mark.
so sort of to my mind, and one of the things that I was chatting with Elena about this whole week is that the government is probably going to come in because, okay, RP, let's say that we need to go pay linemen $250,000 a year to get them in the door. Okay.
We already do.
Okay. Right. Let's just go with that then.
Yeah.
To get 250,000 linemen in to do the work we need to do. Let's just use this as an example.
Mhm.
How many jobs at 75K a year are we going to have to lay off, shall we say, in order to cover that hole? Because we're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars every year. Well, who are taking these kind of jobs, these $75,000 a year jobs that pay just enough to live on your own? They're pushing paper or, you know, bits on a computer, you know, doing a couple meetings a day. It's that TikTok. Here's my day in the life of my job at LinkedIn or Twitter or Google, and they do a couple meetings and that's it. Those can all just disappear really fast with something like ChatGPT taking over what they do.
Yeah, and there is a glut of those jobs. They have divided so many skilled trades into very tiny little detailed pieces so they can have more and more of those jobs. And they do that so they can meet their DEI demands and their ESG.
Yes.
I don't know if you know what ESG is, but
I'm
very familiar with corporations. So to meet those needs and have operating capital they can borrow against, they have to do that. They would take like a skilled designer engineer and they'll divide it into 6 different jobs. Each task has a job, and they'll take that pay and divide it maybe 4 times. And then they will hire the demographic that they need into those jobs. So now you've created a bureaucracy, and where one skilled person could have a higher output, you have 4. This is what I mean by social Marxism. That's very dangerous. But you have 4 more taxpayers now, you see, but the product costs more. So when it comes to, those are very comfortable jobs too. I'll say this: you're just getting by, but it's comfort. Sometimes you can work from home a little bit. Sometimes you can go somewhere and chat. To be a lineman, you're going to be exposed to sub-zero weather. You're going to be exposed to 155 degrees in Death Valley. You're going to fly in helicopters. There's huge risks. You're going to be hundreds of feet in the air. You need to show up at 5 in the morning and stay until 1 a.m. Most people don't want to do that. Particularly women don't do that. And that's why there's no women power linemen in the country. Essentially, it is less than 0.002% of all of them. It's very hard and it's difficult because the where their thigh bones attached to their hips causes a lot of pain when they're in the body harnesses to fly or hang off the poles. Now we're getting more and more lift trucks, so that does help, but still the upper body strength is requires you to lift 70 pounds over your head. 70 pounds. Not to mention that if you are strong enough and you were to slip and fall, even though you have a safety, you should be able to at least hold your body weight for 15 seconds with one hand so that you can recover. Now, they don't do a lot of that anymore, but that was a big requirement, you know. I can remember holding a set of tools and hanging on for 45 seconds. And that's a huge length of time when you have tools and you're just using your fingertips.
But there's a lot of guys who can't do that anymore.
Not anymore, but you know, that speaks to other problems that I talked about earlier today, such as loss of testosterone impacts. Yeah, I think what's going to happen is they're going to pay the guys more and more, because when you can bring in multiple six-figure salary for doing this hard work, and it's masculine work, not only are you going to make a lot of money, when you go play, you're going to have some money to spend. So it will become attractive to a certain subset of men. And I think you'll have a rush at some point. It'll be like a gold rush. If we lose enough old linemen, those jobs need to be filled. And so at some point, we won't be able to train enough of them because people want those higher paying jobs. Now, right now on the West Coast, they're paid very well, but they're still 100,000 a year type jobs. We'll see, you know.
And younger people, what I notice is this tendency that they don't want to actually do the hard work. They want to be a content creator or a YouTuber because they see it as more prestigious. They don't want to be electricians, plumbers, somebody who we would actually need, somebody who would be actually useful and valuable for our society to maintain the infrastructure. So these values that we're have.
Social creatures, of course. I mean, this is why we get that dopamine hit every time we get on those phones, and you get somebody that says, "Hey, let me just use an example. For my life, I've been invisible. I am the gray man. I work on, yes, I am a unique character and into myself. Nobody knows my education or what I've done or where I've been, and I like it that way. I'm a private person, but I love my life. I enjoy my life. And then I've entered this space because basically I had friends that I knew in this space. So we chatted and I kind of got sucked into it in a social environment. I'll tell the story sometime, but I got sucked into it. And then over the course of years, I stopped training apprentices, but I wanted to pass this knowledge on. Hence, I went ahead and I wrote the book. And lo and behold, I took my wife out to a resort for the first time in 2.5 years since she's had her neck broken. It's now quadriplegic. I took her out to a place called Palm Springs in California. I was at several points in the city, and lo and behold, RP Thor got recognized for this right here in a city of millions of people. Can you believe that shit? It kind of took me aback and said, what the hell did I do? Because I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it, to be honest with you. Being randomly stopped because I wrote a book or because I was on YouTube.
Well, congratulations, and too late.
Yeah, exactly. Plutarch, stay where you're at. I don't know that I like it yet. Now I'm old enough that maybe I can disappear if I stop dyeing my hair or something. They won't recognize me.
Well, I have for a bunch of very practical reasons. I have no interest in my name getting out on the internet. And as we were discussing before we went live,
absolutely.
What I find fascinating though is there is a certain cohort of women that are really attracted to men with money. And if we get a bunch of these guys who start pulling in, I mean, $250,000 a year, even today with inflation over the past couple of years, is still a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
And so what Elaine and I have been talking about, and with this week, particularly over dinner, is because we talk a lot. She actually does, some of the stuff that she says is stuff that I say in the background, and she's just parroting it out. But we started talking about the concept of state, not just state encouraged polygyny, but state enforced polygyny.
Oh, interesting. This is an outcome of feminism I think we really wanted to get to.
Yes.
Give me your take, Elena. You speak up like we did the other day, and I'll give you my take, because I do think that this is an outcome that feminism thought they wanted, but I think that it's actually opposite of what they wanted.
Well, from what I can see happening online, I see women are claiming a strong, powerful, independent fempowerment, right? We've all seen those posts and reels, short messages that women are sending out there. It's just crazy because they are trying to bend our society. They are trying to basically squeeze men out, get all of the resources from men that men produce. It reminds me of communism because I come from a communist country, right? And it smells very familiar to me. This is what I don't like. This is why I left that place. I also lived in China for 6 months, and guys, US doesn't realize how good we have it here, especially women. They don't realize. If you want variety, ladies, go to China for a few months, live there, go to other places, maybe Latin America, to see how it's there, especially in Venezuela. See what happens in those corrupt communist countries, because this is where feminism is leading us to.
One of the most depressed place I ever went. I graduated high school in 1979. I spent 5 days in East Germany. I was in a place called Karl Marxstadt because they were Marxist to the extreme. That is not the name of that place today. No, they've torn down every vestige of Karl Marx. But the name of the city was Karl Marxstadt, and it was something else, man. Talk about the most depressing 4 days, maybe 5. The people there were not in a good place at all. And that was at the height of the Cold War in 1979. I was on a tour of Europe. So they tried to talk us into defecting and stuff like that. Just an interesting story, side topic. But the communism is definitely a part of feminism. And so let's talk about it. Feminism wants egalitarian society for women. Of course, it sounds very good on paper. They want all of these things, and they want to be able to act like men. And it's been propagated that they should be masculine. In fact, they use a masculine model of supremacy in order to dominate their space. Really, it's just like men. They basically train women to become men in their environment in order to compete with men. And if that doesn't work, they put political pressure on it to basically allow them to gain advantage and not have to compete on the open playing field against men in certain environments so that they can be successful. That's well known, and that's what's happening. Well, what happens is, because of a woman's hypergamous nature, she wants to mate across and up. And we all know most men are completely invisible to women. Men, on whole, are not attracted to women. 80% are unattractive, even stated as unattractive. Unattractive to the point they don't want to look at them. That's our human nature, and accept it, you know. So what happens with that? Women have this huge amount of choice in their teens and 20s of mates they can select from. And it seems like it's a never-ending supply, and it is very visceral. It's very much a small amount. And what I see happening here is, you know, they become invaluable very quickly to the men that have power and means, and they know this. And so it looks to me like in a post-marriage world, which is where we're headed, women that want to be married and have husbands that take care of them may have to share their husband because he's of high value with another woman. So where they thought they would have, you know, maybe their soulmate or their equal that they would find later in life, what they end up with is a man of power and means that they, not that they're settling for, but what they will accept as him having not only one mate, but several mates as well, and hope that she can at least be in number one position. This is where it seems to be heading. Throughout history, you can see this happening. So I think this is one possible outcome that's starting to surface right now and be talked about in this space. What do you guys think?
I don't like it.
I know you don't like it.
Why do I have to share what I
Sharing is caring,
invested
dear.
into? My youth, my best traits.
Not
Why?
everybody, but on whole, I mean, you've heard the women. I'm not settling. You've seen women that
Yeah,
are
I know.
vastly overweight, that don't work out like you, that don't place themselves in the path of self-improvement, that expect to have the highest quality man that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they expect him to be loyal and to worship the ground he walks on and pick the peanuts out of her poo. No, I don't
Yeah.
think so. If the guy's of any caliber, it's the other way around. The girls are picking the peanuts out of his poo just to be near him, and
I
it's too
agree.
bad if there's others around.
I agree with that. And let's hypothetically imagine if women were treating their men with respect, they had desire for men, they would worship the ground that men walked on, they would be willing to cook, to be the mothers in the house, just coming back to their female duties. How do you think would it impact the future of our society? Would it help to some
Yes, and I don't
extent?
think they even have to worship the man. Here's what they have to do. They have to be proud of him and respect what his efforts are to provide for her. That would be enough for nearly all men.
Okay, and don't you think that men have so little expectations from women, and it's part of the problem that men are okay? Because if a woman just appreciates what he is doing, it sets very low bar for women. So a man can be less demanding. She doesn't have to be fit or healthy. There are a lot of obese women out there who we were talking about how hard it is for men to take care of the infrastructure and especially deal with the electricity projects that are life-threatening. And imagine women, it's like, I can't even see women exercising. What are we talking about? Women are so lazy. And my guess is it's because men don't set any they are okay with the bare minimum. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yeah,
they don't
that's an unfortunate side effect
much.
of us men is we are definitely slaves to our nature, and it's the power of the poon. I'm sorry. Men will override everything. Why would a man be satisfied watching porn for hours and hours a day? It's just that the thought of being able to have a woman that's interested in him. Why does OnlyFans work? Why is AI going to put those girls out of business? Now, that might be a possibility. Once those girls are out of business and not making that kind of money, that individual effort that's done personally might actually be able to outcompete an AI where it's face-to-face, in person. That is a possibility. So I think that could be helpful in the future. But men are very much slaves to their biology, and it's really difficult when you've been trained your entire life that, you're bad, women are great. And yet you're still a slave to this biology that says do all of these things, and if you do, you're promised your soulmate at the end. And that's the biggest lie that's ever been told, and feminism supports that lie because it keeps most men in place on the plantation. You do everything right, you be a white knight, you subservient. And that's why the blue pill is so detrimental to men when they take that red pill suppository, Plutarch. It's such a shock. Some men actually kill themselves because I did everything right in my life, and now she's gone, and she is in the eat, pray, love mentality of FOMO, where I married too early. I need to find myself, and what that really means is I need to experience some younger men sexually and find myself and abandon my children and figure myself out. Well, I mean, you made your choices. But and the guy thinks he did everything right. That's not to say there's not some men that are deserving of a split. This is just the general theme that we're seeing over and over again. And some men just don't take it well when they've really swallowed that blue pill, and it's just not worth it. Everything that they have tied their being into was to be that family man and that provider and protector. And when it's ripped from them by the state and or by circumstances, they look around and say, well, that didn't work out. I'm checking out of this simulation. See ya.
Well, and for me, I was lucky. I was surrounded by some pretty based men when I got my face mashed in. And they very quickly put me on. They said, nope, this is just how women are. You need to, this is female nature. This is, you've got to deal with it. And I cleaned myself up within weeks.
Yep.
A lot of guys are, months and years later, they're still pining. No, 6 weeks later, I was done. I was like, okay, because in our state we have a 90-day cooling off period, and I'm just like, even if she comes back, the answer is no. Oh God, no. So that, for me, that's, I mean, I'm not going to give my whole story, but that's what it was for me. And my view of the polygyny thing is a little more economic. My view is that it's going to be required by the state.
Oh, interesting. Tell me.
Well, consider that we have a falling population, right? As we've discussed earlier. In falling populations, tax revenues fall, capital falls, money just becomes hard to find. So it would then behoove the state to offer tax incentives for polygynous marriages, okay, as an alternative to having to take care of and provide hovels and government food for all these single women. Okay.
Interesting. The groundwork's laid for that already,
I do know, which is why I'm sitting here watching this going, I can see where this is headed. And I was reading some Psychology Today studies where they've been seeing a rise of polygyny in the younger generation, particularly Generation Z. They are far more polygynous even than the millennials, although the millennials are, we make the boomers look like prudes, right?
Right.
So my view
I'm a boomer and I'm definitely not a prude. I live the dream, people.
I am a what they call a zennial, so I was born a couple years after the official split, and so I can sit with both, but I am also not a prude at all, much to the dismay of my parents. So,
well, children that are, I guess, would be considered. I guess they span all those generations. If you count my grandchildren, I got it all covered.
Yeah. Well, but just think about, it would be far easier for the government to come into a lineman who's making $250,000 a year and say, look, we will give you a tax deduction, which is cheaper than giving all the money required for housing and food and whatnot, and say, if you take care of these women.
That's a really interesting point, and I don't think the appetite's quite there.
Correct.
I could see this coming. This could happen, and domestic partnership opened that door.
Yes.
Because under those terms that we've all accepted now across the Western world, it doesn't have to be a partnership of two.
Correct.
Now all we need is the legislation that allows for some in one of the states, maybe it's Utah, who knows, that allows for that tax break. And it's game on.
There's going to be a race to implement it.
Because right now with modern marriage, there really isn't any advantage. If you look at the tax break, it's as if you're both working of equal income. It's really not there. All you get is to share in insurance, and you get to share in inheritance, and you have an advance directive. That's it. That's all you've got left with regular marriage today. There is no tax advantage like there used to be.
Correct. And I think the only way, like, to my mind, there's going to have to be other law changes. I don't think just a financial incentive is going to be enough, particularly for as men start to wake up. I do think there's going to have to be some changes to the law could end up saying, and I think this is a problem for the early 2030s as the crisis really picks up into high gear and women start to, AI has replaced a bunch of their jobs already, right? And so women are now all of a sudden freaking out, and they're going to ask for this. My view is that women are going to vote for this.
I think you just touched something. I think you're right. And I think here's why. I think you'll actually get the support of the legal system. Do you want to know why?
Go for it.
Okay. I think you will, because we have a really overbloated legal system when it comes to family law.
Yes.
In this country, it's a $5.8 billion industry. It's huge, huge. Guess what is falling off a cliff? Marriages and therefore divorces.
Yes.
So one of a couple things I think is going to happen. I think in the interim, you might see some laws in states pass, much like New Zealand, where they will actually in family law start saying marriage-like behavior. They will
Mhm.
pass laws. Marriage-like behavior falls under these laws now. And the
Yes.
pushback to that would be the domestic partnership. This would keep the attorneys and the legal system employed. They would support this. Can you imagine a domestic partnerships in which you have several women and one of them wants to leave and wants to claim some of those assets? This would produce an awful lot of work for that industry. So I think they would support it. I think you're probably onto something there. It might take a generation, but that's probably coming. I'm thinking it's coming.
Yeah, and I'm thinking the reason I'm thinking 2030s is we are coming up on somewhere late 2020s a generational split. There will be a
Mhm.
new generation that develops out of that,
Good
out of
point.
the crisis, right? And so I could see a situation where all of a sudden particularly the Zoomers are like, this is the only way, and but we can't do this if divorce law says that the
Mhm.
woman is entitled to half anymore, right?
Yeah.
That no longer works when there's three other women. All those other women are going to go, wait a minute, what about me, right? And I see kind of the end state of this as these women. The law is basically going to say, well, how many? Basically, treat the women as dependents
Yep.
from a tax standpoint, right? That we have the legal structure for this.
It makes sense. I mean, it definitely makes sense. I mean, something like they're doing in New Zealand where they're saying marriage-like behavior, but it's a really funny approach and it's very one-sided. The feminists have driven it, and here's the problem with it. They have legal prostitution, but with laws that say marriage-like behavior, where do you stop? Isn't sex marriage-like behavior? Yet
In
you have
theory,
legal
yes,
prostitution?
yes.
Yeah,
Well, but
food for thought. Just food for thought.
well, but at some point, the state's going to have to go to the women and say, look, you and the men and say, okay, if you do this, it's about the number of women you have, not the individual that are under your care, not the individual woman herself. Well, that now means
Interesting.
that the women are subject to the rules of the man because he can say, look, you're not, I'm going to, if you keep this up, I'm going to kick you out. And there's three more behind you. They're all begging to get in.
I think how they would end up doing it, if I'm just putting my speculation and fantasy hat on here, is they would pose it as this is a two-way street. It could be the number of men you have too. C-suite woman
Yeah.
who is the
Yeah.
CEO. It's the number of men you want as well. It's an advantage to you. So get those men signed up. Let's see how far that goes. Every time that's tried, it just doesn't happen. It works out to where there's multiple women and one high-powered man, not the other way around.
Correct. And that's exactly why I see this heading down that path of the woman's choice becomes do as the man says or ejected back into the hovel that the government provides, and the government doesn't really want you there.
Mm.
Or you can live the lifestyle of the guy who's making a quarter or $500,000 a year, has some, he has a nicer house, he has cars, right? Like life. And what do we know about women and lifestyle? What do we know? Do you think they're going to give it up willingly?
No, it's fun to think about for sure. I mean, I can see the possibility. I think we're in for a really, really tight socialist ride first, though. I think that's really where we're gonna go, considering what they've done with the universities, and so we're gonna have to really feel the pain of socialism before that happens, I think. Or, I mean, I hate to get into it, but a financial collapse is completely on the table right now with transitions to crypto, what the feds are doing, with ESG taking control of the International Monetary Fund for loans on corporations. That's pretty striking. The majority of corporations in the West now belong to the WEF, and they pay money so they can get an ESG rating. It's funny that
Oh,
SpaceX and Tesla doesn't, though.
oh yeah. And then they're doing better for
Mhm,
it.
mhm.
Like I track financial markets very closely, and we can see the crash coming, and we could even tell you where it's going to come from. What we can't tell you is when,
Right.
because there is an enormous amount of effort being put into making sure that it doesn't.
There is actually, and that kind of has surprised everybody, the amount of effort that's been put in, and I think rightly so, actually, because it's going to hurt a lot of people.
I think it's going to hurt more people than the 1930s did.
Yeah,
Because we are far more financialized than we were back then. And
yeah.
we're far more reliant on credit, and the whole system is far more reliant on it. Now, I'm not worrying about basic services collapsing, but
Well, now
Social
wait a
Security
minute.
could go
The
away.
the ESG thing could be really serious because you get a majority of corporations that belong to the WEF, and that's the World Economic Forum, and they got social designs on people where they're actually producing propaganda where they want you to believe certain things. They're bypassing governments to get the majority of people to believe certain things, and these corporations get discounted loans because they have followed this behavior that they want modeled. That's kind of a scary thing, but it's also, it seems like a fragile thing too. It could be a house of cards that falls down very quickly, I think. Now,
I would
who am
actually
I?
agree with you. And what I would say is that interest rates are brutal. When money gets expensive, people start to be very much more careful about what they take a loan on. And you can say, oh, well, the WF gives them a discounted rate.
Mhm,
Right. But that money that they're loaning you had to originate from somewhere else.
mhm.
It's not their money, right? Not really.
No, not at all. And most of them get those loans to operate. That's their operating capital a lot of times.
Yes.
Why use our own reserves when we can borrow?
Right. So I could see a situation where, and it's interesting because BlackRock actually recently announced that they were going to retire ESG from all their public facing documents, in part because the term has become so politically toxic.
You mean because everybody figured out what it actually was?
Yes, exactly. But BlackRock is, and we know how big
You
BlackRock is.
figured out our code words. You broke the magic.
Right. But and what that gives us is an opportunity to retire the concept entirely, particularly as interest rates climb. They are going to stay up here for a while. There is no getting around that. I mean, Jay Powell made it clear Thursday that it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Right. So
It's going to be funny that when times get so hard, people lose weight and they're not so fat anymore and they have a hard time feeding each other. ESG is not going to matter one little bit. That isn't
yeah,
going to matter at all.
I don't care about my environmental and social governance score when I can't eat.
Yeah, I don't care about the environment anymore. I don't care about global warming. I need a Big Mac.
That's right. That is correct.
I
Yes.
don't want Soylent Green. I'm sorry, but I just don't like Soylent Green.
You know they're going to try first, though. I mean, they're already trying with the bugs.
Elena, do you know what Soylent Green is, Elena?
Well, if you explain it, I wouldn't mind.
There was a movie entitled Soylent Green in the late 60s, and it was a takeoff. It was kind of a pushback on Paul Ehrlich's The Population Bomb. And I believe it was Charlton Heston's one of his seminal roles. He was a cop in the future where it was so overpopulated that people lived in, 10 square feet and there was almost no food. And I'll never forget some of the scenes where they had found some frozen strawberries, and it was just it was the pinnacle of their life. He was this cop, and his stepfather, I believe was his stepfather, was dying, his mentor. And he was so sick of the overpopulation, the government bureaucracy, all that stuff, that he wanted to die. So he went to a euthanasia center. It really hurt this guy's feelings. And so he followed where they took the bodies. And when he found out where they took the bodies, the government was issuing food. And the food was called Soylent Green. And what they were doing is taking all the human bodies and processing them into food. And that was the point of the movie. And it was called Soylent Green.
Is it like cannibalism?
They were
in a
processing
way?
them into
Effectively.
food to feed the people. It was the ultimate price for or reactionary movie about Malthusianism.
Oh,
Interesting. It's a very
Yeah.
sad movie.
But it's I don't think we're going to get that far. I think
No,
that
no.
yeah, we are headed for a major population collapse. The U.S. will probably fare better than other places. Unfortunately, Africa is going to get destroyed because they are almost entirely reliant on imported petrochemicals to plant and maintain their crops.
Fertilize. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and for example, Africa is also entirely dependent on Ukrainian and Russian grain. That is
They
no
have real
longer on the
problems
market.
with their corruption especially South Africa. It's really on an
Yes.
internal collapse. A lot of people have fled there. It's really bad. And oh, by the way, they adopted modern socialism.
Oh,
Progressive
yes.
socialism is the order of the day.
So the United States is interesting because, as you pointed out very early, the United States was the independent, rugged man. In demographics, they actually have a term for that. It's called settler culture. The settlers would go across to the country and they would eke out a living on their own, right? That's where that rugged individuality comes from. Well, the United States industrialized very slowly. And so we haven't really quite lost that settler culture yet. Like when I traveled even to Texas, I don't have to get too far out of Dallas or Austin to find some just phenomenal individual people, right? And so it's still there. We still have it. And as long as we have it, the socialism thing is going to meet with resistance. And I think that's one of the few things we have going for us.
Oh, I do too. I think there's tons of opportunities here because it is not a one size fits all. And that's what progressive socialism is all about. And that's what feminism is all about. It is one size fits all. It is the egalitarian blank slate. We're all the same. And that's just really not the case.
Yeah.
While we have lots of similarities, men and women are quite different. Although from one man to the next, we have lots of similarities. And we operate with the same basic firmware.
Yep. I have to admit, it was learning about the red pill, suppository as it is. It was, oh, well, yes, but there's lots of men out here that are thinking the same way. And it was also welcoming. So,
Yep. And none of us are immune from it. I mean, I've been married 31
No.
years and it's been fantastic. But there was a couple of years there where I got very, very ill, lost a lot of weight, and I was not attractive. And I literally had left a job and took a pay cut. And I literally watched the hypergamous nature take a hold of my wife and drive her away from me.
Yes.
Now, I was able to turn it around within months once I recognized it, but she wasn't even aware of it. And she was miserable and depressed. Yet this was occurring. And the whole path out of that's quite harsh, shall I say. And because of female psychology around mate selection and competition and the whole thing. I won't go into any of the detail, but that I was already kind of halfway there to the red pill because my father. And when you have someone like that that's very rugged, they may have bought off on some of the old soulmate myths, but they still were very rugged and masculine men. They had a portion of it. So it wasn't as hard for me as it was for some men. I didn't have to be destroyed by it. I was able to look around and say, yeah, this shit's happening over the course of the last 18 months. This is a problem. Even though I'm being gaslit and said it's not my problem, it's her problem. And it's like, no, it's really not. There's a problem here. And it has to do with female nature and the fact that I'm in a particular circumstance and I'm going to fix that shit. And then it was kind of like, oh. And I watched the red pill play out in real life over the course of about a year. And it was
interesting. Amazing. It's interesting when you start observing the behavior, how women behave. And what I would point out to men also that you can really detect who your wife is and how she responds to challenging situations. So if she is really into you, it doesn't even matter like if you go through some challenges in your life, because it can happen to anyone, right? And a man can lose a job or he can get a pay cut. It's situational, right? And what really matters here is how man approaches this circumstance, whether he has the will and the strengths, the male dominance that you were writing about, right? To get away from the situation, to improve it. And this is what women are probably looking for in men, not to give up. And you will see the hints of it in feminists. You shouldn't buy into them, because in that case, women are just looking for the perfect guy who would just do anything that they tell you to do. But you can definitely watch how they say, oh, but he was supposed to get my message. Oh, but he was supposed to figure it out. And to some extent, you need to realize that this is not the game that I'm playing. These are not my rules. These are not my boundaries. So it's either she plays with my rules, right? Because I saw a reel. This is why I'm bringing it up. There was a girl. She she was a pretty girl, and the guy approached her and he said, "So, shall we have dinner tonight?" And she's like, "No," and he left her right away. And she was surprised. Why would he do it? Why wouldn't he ask her for a reason, or why didn't he try again and again and again, as many times as it takes to convince her to go out with him? And he told her, "Look, I have a game on the computer that I usually play. I don't need you to play the game with me." So to some extent, I think that, yeah, in a way, women are shit testing men, but it doesn't, the way they do it, it doesn't help them to figure out whether the man is, I don't want to call like the good man or like the right man for them.
They're testing for qualifications.
Yeah, they're testing for qualifications, but their qualifications suck to begin with. You know what I
Correct.
mean?
Yeah, they're misguided in their qualifications for sure. Modern feminism. So I'm going to give you guys some tips on that. And when you're working with people, if they have a viewpoint that is based in the oppressed oppressor philosophy,
Oh boy.
at this core, this is what feminism is. There is an oppressor that is oppressing me. It is not my fault. All victim mentality that is broadcast today to create fear comes from that. The right and the left use it because it is effective. But you can screen people in your life when they start. You talked about accountability. When a person can't take about accountability, it's like, oh, they didn't give me the job. These people didn't do that. It's they, and it's him, and it's people that did this or did that, and that's why shit sucks for me. Those people you must avoid. And unfortunately, most people behave like basically preteen adolescents. And I think there's reasons for modern women and men to behave like preteen adolescents. Once again, I think it is multifaceted and it is varied, but I believe that we're under an environmental assault on our hormone levels, and I think it plays right into our emotional maturity. I'll leave it at that. But with men and women suffering hormone levels that are nearly 50% of what they were just 40 years ago, that's true for men, but guess what? It's true for women too. It's no wonder they act like preteen adults now, even into their adulthood. And you've all been to junior high or seen how junior high kids act somewhere between 7 and 10th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I walked with
they're not
them
getting together real often.
Mm-hmm.
They're at each other's throat. And there's a term I just started to use because I think it's true. What is it about men and women's communication today that appears to be a debate style? I call it argue-maxing. It seems to me that
I like this.
Modern communication style is argue-maxing, based in sign language, which is shame, insult, guilt, and the need to be right. And I'm seeing it more and more with men that don't have their shit together. And I'm seeing it with a large amount of women. Even women that have their shit together are doing this too, argue-maxing. And I see this argue-maxing online, these shorts these women are doing, bleeding their hearts out about victim mentality and how men suck and the world's a piece of shit and they know better and they're 22 years old. And I'm thinking, geez, this is some serious argue-maxing. I wonder if they actually behave this way in real life. And then I went on Fresh and Fit. And I was in Miami for a week. Unfortunately, it was my rude awakening to the fact that, yeah, it's kind of true in certain circumstances. There are parts, and I've always isolated myself, and my social circle isn't nearly that bad, the social circles that I hang out with and that I associate with. But for the most part, modern feminism really supports this argue-maxing, this sign language, and this oppressed oppressor philosophy, which is rooted in Marxism. You guys see that too?
if you look at it like from outside, right, it really tries to separate men from women.
Why would they do that?
So that we don't have babies.
That's it.
Hey, I can take notes too.
Oh, we got to keep practicing that, you know.
Well, we have to keep practicing a lot of things, and unfortunately, we're one of the few groups of people out there who are paying any attention to this at all, and are willing to stand up to it. So, my thing is right now, and you know, like how can we generate strategies for standing up to it? You know, it's to me, the Fresh and Fit thing was interesting. I think it was sort of a group, almost generational catharsis moment to see those women getting taken down a peg. But I'm starting to see more and more comments along the lines of, okay, what's next? You know what I mean? Like, what? Okay, we've had our group catharsis. Like, we have seen the women, we have seen what women are and how they are. We understand what some of these problems are. Now, what next? What do we do next?
Yeah, no, Myron, my friend, he's my friend. We started together with MLD on the lecture circuit that he had put together. We were both instructors there, and I had helped him with his high value academy as well. And he was definitely got out in front of that. You know, that was kind of a secondary thing, actually. You know, they just wanted to do podcasting, and we had done some podcasts with a gal up in your area, up in Washington. She had put together several podcasts where guys like us would talk to a woman, particularly a woman that generally is very pretty, was like in the pageant circuit, and we would discuss red pill topics with them. This was all edited, and it was cumbersome and all that sort of thing. And I think Myra really took something like that, and he really took it to the next level. He put it live and actually demonstrated, you know, when he got to Miami, he really figured out quickly how much of this stuff was actually on the ground and happening every single day and front and center in your face. It really gets demonstrated quickly. It can't be hidden, and you can't be gaslit when it's right there in your face.
Yeah, and I think it was an incredibly useful thing to see broadcast live, and I think that's part of the reason they got so big, is all these men were able to see for the whole world, put this behavior on display, and watch. To me, watching their history, because I started watching them before he Frank Castle the first girl, and you could tell that there was the before Frank Castle and there was the after Frank Castle. After Frank Castle was a whole different subscriber and, you know, view hours and likes and the super chats. Like, it was night and day difference.
Oh, they were waiting to hear it. They wanted to hear it. They wanted to hear, shame these whores, you know?
Yes, shame these whores.
I agree that these whores need to be shamed, but the problem that I see in execution, in how we do it, it's questionable. Because look, like, okay, I'll give you what I think. Okay, what I've been watching and observing with my social media and communications and mass media degree and stuff. So what I see is women learn from other women. And the behavior that is being portrayed, they see these women, these OnlyFans girls that are being popularized. It's not to say like, okay, it doesn't even matter the context, that guys, Fresh and Fit, they are doing an amazing job, and they went through some women, they made them cry. That's an amazing thing. Maybe those women, they woke up and they could see the reality of what's in front of them. That's a good sign, right? But most of them did not. Women come to these shows with one purpose only: to expose themselves and to get more clout for themselves, because we have
OnlyFans subscribers.
And OnlyFans subscribers, yeah, they're using Instagram funnel marketing, you know, to get more clout, more money, more resources for their other accounts that are associated with the ones that they are promoting there on the shows. So my problem is that, okay, we know that we need to shame this horse. It needs to be done, right? Married women need to kind of unite, in my opinion, and really criticize, because we used to have this society before where women and men, they wouldn't consider horse seriously, they wouldn't invest a lot of money into them, they wouldn't be talking about them, they wouldn't be popularizing them on the shows. Now Instagram, social media have replaced the streets. This is what is happening outside. If you want to go find a date, you go where? On social media, on the dating application somewhere, right? You are scrolling through multiple accounts there. You're not actually going outside to the library, to the club, even maybe club of interest, maybe even gym or other facilities out there, right? You go online, and this is how you meet people. So the way how we execute it is like we give them what they want. And what they want is more attention, more clout. This is what they get in the end. Yes, you are shaming them. Yes, you are saying it. But with our behavior that we are promoting them, we are kind of contradicting what the actual message is, you know, what we want guys not to do. This is my problem, because then younger women see this behavior and they say, oh, I want to be on this show or that show. It doesn't matter. I want to get access to this man. What do I need to do? Oh, wait a second. I just need to post on social media with a nice angle here and there, you know, get a couple hundred of followers out there, maybe a few thousand of followers. And then this is my meal ticket to the cloud and more resources, you know. So yes, I agree, we need to shame the horse, because they don't bring anything good for our society, and they impact the lives of married women. There is a potential threat to even stability of my marriage, and I see it coming. And I don't want that. I don't want that to happen to other married women. I don't want it to happen to myself. But how we do it, I have my questions. I have my concerns.
I have the utmost respect, and I am so thankful for women like you. I truly am. You hold the highest place in my heart, women that are like you. However, I'm going to push back on you really hard, because I am somewhat of a just below average god amongst men. So I will tell you this from my perspective. I absolutely love 304s. I think they're the greatest things out there, because, you know, it's so much fun for guys like me to just play with them, because I know exactly what they are. They wear it on their sleeves. I don't have to be fooled in any fashion. And I because of that, I live the dream. And because I live the dream and I love these 304s, I just think that, you know, instead of having to work opposite, only 20% of the men get all these girls, almost all the girls out there want to be whores now. So let them be whores. We need, and 304s make really good side chick energy. We need more side chicks. That's what I'm thinking. Got to have some side chicks that'll keep more chicks in line, because one thing you got to realize, that side chicks keep side chicks in line. Side chicks need to shame each other, and that will put the women back in line. So I personally love 304s. Bring them on. 304s shame other 304s more than anybody else. So we got to recruit the 304s to shame the hoes. And the best way to do it is that side chick energy, I think. I know I talked in a lot of circles, but Thor loves the 304s. Sorry. I just do. Maybe I just love women. I can't tell you.
So I think in summary, what she's saying is that that by doing that, we are sort of, yeah, we're shaming them, but then we're also we're donating our cloud at the same time. So they're getting something for it. So yeah. Oh, you know.
Oh, you mean when we shame them? I personally won't do it. I don't do that. I love them. I play with them, but not in that fashion at all. You know, I'll take them serious. I'll listen to them. I'll enjoy them as the human being that they are. But I won't do that, because I think there is a portion of them that need that attention, and I will deprive them of that, as far as that attention, whether it's shaming or not. You know, if they want to flirt, play back, I'll speak with them. It goes nowhere, but yeah, I won't give them the attention they truly want. So, and that's what men will have to do. But as far as There's so many of them where I'm at right now, and they all got this amazing side chick energy. That's what I say. So let the side chicks fight it out amongst themselves. They shame themselves more than anybody else does. Have you ever seen two whores shaming each other? You know what they call each other? You're a whore. No, you're a slut. No, you're a whore. No, you're a slut. They just go back and forth and back and forth. So let them have at it.
I did see some of that in my high school days. Did not understand what it was back then. You know, we don't all come to the red pill.
I think by living the example of a righteous and just woman who's very, very feminine, that will become more and more attractive to women than this other path.
Oh, I think it will too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a whole list of reasons why, not even all of them, just related to women, but, Elena and Coco being out there and talking about how they treat, their husbands and, how they view things. I think people are going to go, you mean that's all I have to do? It doesn't look so bad.
No. Right? And like a woman of my wife's generation, you know why they went to college? They wanted to be educated, but they wanted to find an educated husband to take care of
the degree of Mrs., right? The MRS
exposure. Yeah. That was the whole point.
Yeah, but it still won't help us. Okay, if we stay away and enjoy our life as married wife, I would love that. In fact, I might end up doing that anyway. Because you're telling me here, like, there is the path that's okay, you will bring more value to the society if you just stay married and be happy and etc. I still think that we will end up sharing our husbands as married women. I don't want that, because I don't agree. I don't think it's fair, because a lot of women, they will just like take what I've been working on for my entire life to get where I am right now with my husband, with the good man that I vetted. I
don't think you have to share them entirely. You might share them sexually, but you probably won't have to share resources. The way
she doesn't want to do
done hundreds of years ago. And even as it's done today in Thailand with the king, who is one hell of a stud alpha, he's a jet fighter pilot, is done kind of in a different way. He's married to the official queen, and the king of Thailand has an official concubine. That means the queen has anointed her, and they have this entire ceremony in which the concubine crawls up on her hands and knees to the queen and the king and gets anointed, and now she can have official heirs along with the queen. The queen has accepted her in that role. And this happened with the very, very wealthy men in the past. The queen kind of regulated the king's access to these women. So if a woman really does her job right, and she wants to be the queen, I mean, you hear the 304s all the time. I'm the queen. Great. Now you get to regulate the 304s that the king has access to. That's how
I can select the women that he could sleep with. That's what you're telling
but you don't, and you dole out any resources that they might have access to. That seems to be successful throughout history when that is applied. There is a pecking order, and it seems to have some sort of legs to it if you look deep enough. It's just not the same as you get an equal wife. That's very egalitarian. It's never like that. And relationships aren't equal when it goes that way.
We've actually talked about that, and I've brought this up. King Solomon, there was also one queen. I mean, he had 1,000 different women, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not all those women had the same level of access.
Nope.
Like throughout history, this is how it works.
And the queen typically regulated that. Absolutely.
Right. Well, and this is why I was saying that the laws would have to change around divorce for this polygyny thing to work, because the women are not equal, right? You could say, oh, well, who was, I don't know what the law is going to come up with, but it could be something like, oh, well, this woman was only with you for 1 year. This woman was only with you for, I don't know, right? I'm not a family law guy. That's James Sexton's, his area. But it's like, oh, well, but that woman, she was the first one. She gets the bulk, right? And that kind of is similar to what you're talking about, of the queen gets most of the stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then she determines what the concubines get, right? After that.
Okay. It fits in with male nature in many ways. You guys know that men will fall in love with one woman, love her to death. And then because of his nature, he would be exposed to opportunity, sexual opportunity, and he'll take it. But he still loves that woman and go right back to her. He won't drop everything. Now, the reason that happens And they have science, and I want you to look at the science behind this. Look at what happens when women cheat on or have affairs on their husbands. 85%, 80 to 85% fall in love with their affair partner. With men, it's exactly opposite. They don't fall in love with their affair partner. They isolate it, and it has a lot to do with how we are built.
Yeah, but then if those women are treated as dependents, so he still, you, like me as a queen, okay? I would still have to share my husband's resources with them to some
And
extent.
so many resources that it's meaningless to you. I mean, if you don't have enough resources, he doesn't deserve to have those side chicks. He doesn't deserve to have those extra ones.
That's a good message to women. Go marry the guys who don't have a lot of resources, ladies.
If you're making plenty of money, say, let's say $250K, you can afford two. You know, it's no problem.
Yeah.
Maybe three on the side. But, you know, I mean, let's be real. There is a value exchange going on here. And if it strains into your resources that yeah, it would be a problem unless you've absolutely agreed to share those. That could potentially be a problem. But if he had so many resources, it's not much of a problem other than psychologically to you, which it could be, you know. Particularly, your biggest worry is, look, so he's spending a few $100s here and there with her, but he doesn't love her like he loves me. I mean, a woman's big existential fear is that he's going to love another woman and invest in her because she's aging out of the market much more quickly, and she might be younger, hotter, tighter. That's a big problem for a lot of women, you know. And if you can control what your husband has access to, you can kind of guide that in such a fashion that it might not end as bad as it could. You could kind of control that slide or that outcome in some respect. I'm speculating here, but I could see it being a possibility.
Yeah, and it would also motivate the wives to behave better so that the husband wouldn't
The
go
Patrice
side.
O'Neill effect.
Yeah, like when you see the dread, this is the dread we are talking about. A wife is scared of losing her husband. She's a little jealous that he might go and spend more money or more attention on that other chick out there than her. Yeah, this will motivate women to exercise and be in a decent shape. This will motivate women to do all sorts of things.
In this space, we really glorify dread beyond where it needs to be. And let's go back to Rawls' fundamental. What does he state is the cardinal rule? The very first thing in his book, which was the most brilliant of observations, the most brilliant observation, because even with the cardinal rule in place, dread is implied. You don't even have to put it out there. The cardinal rule is the person with the most power in the relationship needs the other the least. Therefore, if you're the man and that's the case, she will have that existential fear without you even having to express it. And that puts you in a position to satisfy all her needs. When she thinks anything else, then she thinks that you are not her equal or better, but you are her lesser. And she can't help it. It's built into her instinct. Her firmware is such. I've witnessed it. And that's really hard pill to swallow. That's why it's not a pill. That's why it's a suppository.
Yeah. I've actually witnessed it with Elena. There was a waitress who was getting real flirty with me. Oh my goodness. I got an earful in the car on the way home, right? And I was just going,
it wasn't that bad. I just told you what I was thinking. Yes.
I would predict you had the best sex you had in weeks when you got home.
Yes, we did. But that's she doesn't want me talking about that.
The reality of competition anxiety.
Right, but it's true. And the thing about the red pill at the end of the day is it is just observational truth. It is, yes, it's a suppository, but it's not an ideology. And I love that Rollo keeps hammering on that, because it isn't. Reality, I'm afraid to say, is a suppository when you have been as disconnected from reality as we have tried to make ourselves in this culture. So, yeah.
Well, thank you guys. Plutarch, what a pleasure talking to you. You're actually quite educated in this, and I appreciate you. And Elena, what a pleasure. You play the piano
Oh.
just like my wife. It's amazing to hear you play. She doesn't play anymore because she's a quadriplegic, but she's learning again. And so I appreciate your multi-talents that you're sharing with your audiences, which that in and of itself is probably enough for some young ladies out there to idolize and understand what is possible for a woman to accomplish and to be fulfilled by. Now, my prediction for you, dear, is if you have some children, I will gladly see you off into the sunset from this space, because that's typically what happens to every woman here that is between 25 and 35. They come into this space. We love the crap out of them. And they have that sweet little child in there. Audio AMF, basically AMF. That's just like my good friend Allie and Tom.
Yeah,
You know,
I
Oh,
know
yeah.
her. Yeah, I
The
watched
A
her
team. I
plenty.
love the reference, by the way.
you're no longer really interested in shaming those 304s once you have one of those sweet little kids in front of you. It's like, I got my life here, and this is my fulfillment, and this is a good thing. It's what it's all about.
Yeah, once I get fed up with the red pill, probably then okay, let's have a child now.
Oh boy.
Way better than a dog, I'll tell you. And I love dogs a lot. But,
Oh yes, dogs are
yeah,
best
I mean,
friends.
I got four of my own, and I've got 13 grandchildren now. So
Wow. Nice.
I
Nice.
guess when it comes to the neocons, I win.
You do.
Yeah, well, guys. Oh, keep going. Yeah, I was just.
I was just going to sign off. You know. Say,
No, that's great.
Okay. Well, I wanted
Yeah.
to thank the guys who sent the super chats. I wasn't sure when would be the good time to go through them, so I put Nico here, on about green energy. This is when we were talking about green energy. Thank you, Nico.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and then we have Alex Patino.
Oh,
Because
thank
I
you.
wanted you.
These are probably coming in on my channel. I don't
know.
have access to
I
see them
wanted
right
you
now.
to. Yeah, I wanted you to read them because it's like
Sure.
whenever you were talking, I didn't want to occupy you guys. So
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't
for
see them come in because I have it linked the way it's linked right now. Yeah, this
Okay.
is Alex. This is fantastic. Yeah, he's driving his truck. Almost 60% of drivers began driving in the 70s and early 80s. Most have begun to retire by 2030. Yeah, that's a big deal too. That's another infrastructure issue, because I don't know if you realize, but we used to ship by rail. And I believe that used to be about 70% of all freight, and it has reversed. Rail is now down to 30, and it's trucks. You guys all know it. You've been on the road, right? You see all the trucks on the road?
We live next to a major rail line, and I get to watch the trains.
And all
yeah.
the distribution centers that are opened up that are truck. Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
And then another one from Alex too.
Alex, $10. Fantastic. I should probably give him a one of my sound effects. I wish I had yours loaded up. There's Odin for you. I can attest to women willing to share. I was serving in the Army and stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, and I dated 3 gals from Guatemala and even told them about the others, and they didn't care. I don't know how far I should go with this, but women are generally more open to this when you frame it in the right context and you're of such a value. They may not like it initially, but there are certain advantages that we could talk about some other time when I've been exposed to others that have had polygamous relationships with multiple women. There are, you talk to those women, there are certain advantages that they enjoy that others don't. And I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just saying some women are very suited to that, being communitarian and actually become friends with these other women in a strange sort of way. It seems like there might be something inside of us that, you know, in ancient times when there wasn't very many of us, and this was a way to build a population quickly, has taken hold in some sort of evolutionary fashion. I can't describe it any more than that. So yeah, thank you, Alex.
And then we have another one from him.
Alex, man, I feel like you get a double Odin. Then again, there are those 3 gals from Guatemala who were illegally in the country, so I guess they had something that they wanted and needed. You know, Alex, here's the thing. Every relationship is temporary, and every relationship is a value exchange, which means they want and need something out of that relationship. And the closer you can come to grips with that, you'll get rid of that egalitarian ideal that says there's this soulmate and there's this unconditional love. There is, but the unconditional love is only for a child and for dogs, and that's it. And it's not for us to dogs. It's from dogs back to us. You know, they'll love you to death while you're strangling them. So I'm just letting you know. That's very rare.
I don't know. I've seen Elena simp for her dog a few times before.
She may have, well, you know, she doesn't have children yet. So she got
That's
to
true.
have an outlet for some of that unconditional love. But typically, you know, it goes right back to these red pill principles.
Yeah.
You know, definitely when you're looking at relationships, something wanted and something needed. And if you provide that and you provide it in such a way that it is given with masculine leadership, it's enough. It's more than enough. And they're going to want to keep it because when you find something good, you want to stick with it.
I can only agree with that.
All righty.
Well, that's pretty much it. I don't see any more super chats, but thank you guys for joining us today. Very interesting comments. Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
very interesting conversation. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing.
Appreciate it. Let me know how you like my book.
I'll
maybe
keep
we can
reading
talk
it.
about
I
it
started it and it's so funny.
Plutarch, you take a look at it too and see what
I will. It's on our Kindle, so
On Kindle,
and we share
yeah.
that. So
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So and yeah, thank you for chatting with us today.
Absolutely. Skull, you guys.
Well, take care, everyone. Like, share, and subscribe, please, and we'll see you next time. Bye.